All right, good morning, Patriots. Thank you so much. It's early. It's still dark outside. What the hell are we doing up at this hour? You know, I used to do radio at 5 a.m. for many, many years. I used to do 5 o'clock a.m. radio. This is actually a break compared to that. Yeah, it's just a little bit different. We're getting on a little bit earlier. Welcome to the chatters who are in the room right now. Love you guys. Did you get my email last night? Somebody tell me if you got an email last night or this morning. I really am going to open up the chat right now. Rosin, Joanne, and CAD and Charlie are all in. Yo, Jimbo are in early. Did you get my email reminding everybody that we were going live at 7 a.m.? I need to find that out because that should have happened last night. I sent out a really nice email. I put a lot of thought into it. Didn't get it out until around 11 o'clock. I wanted people to wake up to it. It was supposed to come at 6 o'clock this morning. But I don't know if it went out because I looked in my own email box. And I'm going to look at it again right now, in fact, to see if it ever showed up. It's usually pretty reliable. And I just don't know if it actually came through this morning. And now I've got all kinds of frozen stuff happening here. Yeah, I'm still not showing that it actually was delivered. And it's not in any one of my 4 email inboxes. So for whatever reason, one reason or another, I don't see it. So I'm looking at you chatters. Did you get it? Check your email. Ernie says no email. Yo, Jimbo says I got email. All right, that's not cool. How come some people got it and some people didn't? I just wanted to remind everybody about what we're doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it. And, of course, the why is really irrelevant. This is just what has to be done because I got other things I've got to do during the day today. Now I can't do the show in the regular, 10 o'clock to noon time slot. But I'm also doing, by the way, my guy Brian, who's a strong guy, great guy, great supporter, great friend. He's trying to figure out how to make sure that at 10 o'clock this morning, which is when we would have been live, based on the first 3 weeks of doing this brand new show, which Brian, by the way, corrected me and said it's not in its infancy. It's not even a zygote yet. 3 weeks is nothing in the grand scheme of things. And he's not wrong about that. But I forgot where I was going with that. I'm trying to figure out how to make sure that I can replay this back live for you or set it up to play for you at 10 o'clock in the event if people did not get the message either on Friday when I announced we were going to be doing early morning radio or early morning podcasting or to anybody or did not receive the message this morning. So I'm looking all over the place here for my email that I sent out. And it looks for whatever reason like it did not go out. It said that it was going to, and I'm still not seeing it in my email inbox. And I'm just looking at my constant contact thing to see what was going on. But anyway, we'll figure it out. And if you found your way here at this early hour anyway, God bless you for the hustle. Seriously, that's big time. So yeah, we've got a lot of things to do. Tom Z is going to stop by today, by the way. Tom Zawistowski. I was chatting with him this morning. He's up early every day. He knows we've got a country to save, and he's up trying to figure out how. Tom Z from the We the People convention in Ohio, great guy. We had him on in I think the second week of the show. Tom has got a lot of thoughts on Venezuela. He's got a lot of thoughts on what's going on in Ohio with the Somali daycare fraud. And he's got thoughts on the Ohio governor's race, too. And I said, hey, because we were just texting back and forth about it. And I said, hey, you got so much to say. You want to come on the air and say it with me? And he said, yep. And he's going to be here in the 8 o'clock hour at some point. So that'll be happening. First hour is just going to be you and me. I've got a lot of stuff to share with you. And I've got a lot of, a lot of things to ask you as well in the chat. So, we may be a little lean this morning because, again, we are just switching over, and some people may or may not have gotten the message that we are going to be live. But for those who are here, do me a favor. If you are watching right now, and we've been averaging around 200 to 300 people for most of the time that we were doing the live shows, again, with no promotion, with no boosted posts, no announcements or anything of that nature, which is pretty good, especially given the 1,200 or whatever it is number of followers that we have right now. getting 200-300 people to watch live is a good percentage. But anyway, those who are here, and right now there's like 55 people watching on this, and for all of the chatters as well. Oh, look at that. That is Tom Z in this morning. How about that? I mentioned he was going to be on live with me. He's in the chat room right now. He said, we did get the email, Bob. Okay. Well, that's good to know because I didn't. Kind of weird. I was looking at my own inboxes and it just did not come in. And yeah, he said, look in your spam, but I get my own emails all the time with this. I've never had to go into the spam to find it. But it's kind of, I don't know, it just happened that way. Okay. And now I see some other people. Kelly said, I got a notification. Macromia said, I got an email. Joanne said, I got, okay, well, good. Then maybe we'll get a few more people. What I was going to say is, if you're in already, anyway, thank you. That's awesome for being here. And send it to other people. Just text people that you know that are like-minded folks. Say, hey, Bob's on right now live until 9 o'clock. And anyway, I was getting to the point about my buddy Brian. Brian is going to try to help me figure out how to play this back for the 10 o'clock crowd, for the normal people who did not get any information, or even if they did, they couldn't be up at this early hour to join us. So we're going to try to run this back again at 10 o'clock. It'll end at 9 o'clock, and it'll be run back 10 to noon so that the normal crowd at the normal time can see it. But again, do me a favor, as I mentioned in each of my emails and virtually everywhere else that I can, send the information. Tell people right now, text them and say, you're live. Bob is live on Rumble, and here's the link, and get them to follow and subscribe. And don't forget when you get in to hit the like button. Got to hit that thumbs up button so that we can beat the algorithm. So there you go. That's where we are. All right. Thank you again for coming on or coming in with us this morning. What a crazy weekend. I didn't have invade Venezuela on the bingo card for Saturday morning. And of course, to be truthful, we didn't invade Venezuela. The left wants you to think that we declared war on Venezuela. What President Trump did on Saturday, he didn't declare war on Venezuela. He liberated Venezuela from its captor. He liberated a country and a people that have been imprisoned, that have been essentially starved out over the course of the last 20 plus years of the Hugo Chavez and the Nicolas Maduro regimes. I hate when they freaking do that, by the way. I was watching coverage of this on Saturday on Fox, and I can't remember who the anchor was, but he was doing that thing. And if you're in the chat and you can bear witness to this, I would be so happy to know I'm not the only one. I saw one comedian doing a bit about this. No, it wasn't even a comedian. It was somebody on Newsmax. And it just gave me such validation because I thought I was the only one who hated this. You know what I'm talking about? I'm going to chase a squirrel here, so let my ADD run wild. Do you ever notice that people, particularly people who are of Hispanic descent, but speak perfect English without any accent, they literally will speak, like, for example, for Nicolas Maduro, his name pronounced in English is Nicolas Maduro. You know, the guy that was sleeping in a palace mansion, you know, gorgeous gold bed in Caracas just a couple of nights ago is now sleeping in a 6x9, courtesy of New York City. Yeah. Nicolas Maduro is pronounced Nicolas Maduro. And you'll have people on, you know, typically broadcasters, and they'll be speaking with that same exact, you know, just normal English sound. Maduro is Maduro. But when it comes to the names like Maduro, suddenly it's all Spanish accented. So somebody is speaking with a perfect English accent, and then when they say the name of the now deposed and former and arrested Venezuelan strongman, they'll call him Nicolas Maduro. It's like, why do you throw that Spanish accent on it just because it's a Spanish name? You're not speaking with a Spanish accent with every other word you say in your sentence. I saw a guy on Newsmax do it. I think it was Newsmax. I'm 99% it was Newsmax. And I just applaud. I shared it with my wife because I have been bitching about this for so long. And whoever it was who did the bit on Newsmax did such a funny little follow-up saying, you know, look, I'm Irish. every time I say the name of an Irishman like Patrick Murphy, do I say, "Oh, Patty Murphy"? And I can't do an Irish accent, so it's going to fall flat here. But no, it is just such an annoying thing. And I listened to the news coverage of Maduro's arrest and the the airstrikes and so on and so forth in Venezuela on Saturday morning, late Friday night into Saturday morning, and I listened to the Fox announcer for like 3 hours as we were waiting for Trump to take the podium and address the nation with this stuff. And I listened to a guy for 3 hours speak perfect English, except for when he was said Maduro. He'd say Maduro, and it's pissing me off. I don't know if anybody else gets it, but you understand my point. So anyway, I didn't have that on my bingo card for Saturday. Find out we did not invade Venezuela. We liberated Venezuela from somebody who is starving the people out there. Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro, his successor, both of them just look. Everybody knows the story right now. And in fact, I don't know if I have the graphic. I'm going to try to put it up for those who are watching this morning live so you can react to it. But there's a graphic that shows the GDP and the wealth and the number of people in poverty and so on and so forth. Those kind of like, macro type of economic metrics between Poland and Venezuela. And it showed what Poland's, poverty rate looked like and what its economic growth rate looked like and so on and so forth back when it was a socialist country that was still under the influence of the Soviet bloc, right? And then Venezuela, when Venezuela was a free country that was prospering, particularly because of the, quantity of oil that is under the ground in Venezuela. They were they were one of the wealthiest nations in Latin America. And so the graphic, which again, I might not have available to me at the moment, but if anybody is searching for it and you find it and want to share it on the chat, I'll pop it up there. Brian, did you find the link? Brian, really? Brian says he might. I'm looking at the chat. And again, this is ADHD at its worst. But Brian said he may have just found the Newsmax piece I was talking about the accents. So I might have to look into that in a moment. But anyway, the graphic shows Poland going from when they were under the, socialist Soviet bloc, what the people were living like then, which was just squalor and starvation, compared to where it is now that they embraced free market principles and capitalism. And Poland is surging. It's one of the best economies in the entire East, in all of Eastern Europe, and maybe all of Europe, period. And then Venezuela, in almost a concurrent time frame, Venezuela went from being an economic giant in Latin America because of its oil to what it is now, where people are roasting rats on sticks over open barrel fires in order to have sustenance for their families. Not making that up. That's legitimate and real. All right. So Venezuela, the people there have been just completely, taken from flourishing, thriving to just starving and dying over the course of the last X number of years. It's been about 20, 25 years, I think, combined between the two. Point being, the people of Venezuela, why do you think they were all cheering when Trump took Maduro out? Why do you think they were all just, they were dancing in the streets? They were tearing. It reminded me of when we went into Iraq and took Saddam out, when they tore his statue down and they were all beating the statue of Saddam with their shoes, jumping up and down on it, spitting on it, because they were terrified to say his name in the wrong way, before that. And I'm not trying to suggest that Venezuela is going to be Iraq. Obviously, don't misunderstand and get that twisted, because obviously Iraq turned out to be a debacle the way things went. But deposing the strongman liberated the people of that country. And deposing Nicolas Maduro liberates the Venezuelan people, and they're tearing down his giant, not life-size, building size, murals and posters and so on and so forth, all, put up dedicated to him in his honor, as paying homage to him. The people are dancing in the streets as they celebrate, Maduro's fall, because it means they're going to have an opportunity. They're going to be able to live. So there's and maybe get their lives back. We don't know, because we know that right now the new leadership in Venezuela, in Maduro's absence, is pledging to keep the spirit going, the same spirit of crushing, stifling, economic contracting, starving of the people that Maduro was leading is going to continue. President Trump said, by the way, and we're going to play some of these clips here for you in a few, said, word to the wise, you better change course, or else we're going to come back for another run. We're going to come back for another run. We're going to take the next one out too. He's dedicated to this. So, point of all of that being, President Trump did not wage war in Venezuela. President Trump liberated Venezuela at the same time protecting. And people say, well, what about America first? Trump said he was going to be all about America first. How is going into Venezuela and arresting or deposing their leader, how's that America first? Well, that's the other half of the equation. First of all, President Trump didn't issue an arrest warrant for Nicolas Maduro. That was done 5 years ago. That was done in 2020. That was done, 4 years ago. It was done in 2021 under Joe Biden. I guess it is 5 years ago now that we just flipped the calendar to 2026. But it was done in 2021 when an arrest warrant and an indictment was handed down in the Southern District of New York for Nicolas Maduro for a variety of crimes, not the least of which are drug trafficking and running a drug cartel and smuggling, scores of lethal, deadly drugs into the United States for his profit and to our detriment, to essentially help kill the American people with the access to these highly addictive and lethal narcotics. So Trump didn't say, hey, we're going to arrest a world leader. This arrest warrant or indictment was handed down under Joe Biden. All President Trump did was serve it. Well, you say, what about the airstrikes? Why did he do all the left screaming about the air? Why did you have to do? Because you don't just send American military on the ground and hope that they can. This isn't a spy novel. It's not a Tom Cruise movie. It's not, easy to just put American troops on the ground in the middle of a foreign city and have them lurk about and find a way into the presidential palace without, being detected. It's not like there's, Denzel Washington in what's the series called? For crying out loud. It's one of my favorite series. I love it. And I'm blanking on it. Not The Negotiator. You know the one I'm talking about. They made it into a TV show where there's a female star in it. And I don't even know what her name is. Anyway, but it's not like you've got, the specialists like Denzel or Gerard Butler or somebody sneaking in and snapping the necks quietly of all of the guards and then creeping up the stairs and getting, Maduro in his bed. It's not like it works like that. The reality is there's real security and people have real abilities to protect and defend and so forth. And that means that there would be American troops and agents on the ground there in harm's way. The airstrikes were to support their efforts and defend them and protect them. And that means through the airstrikes, taking out some of the defensive forces, some of the individuals who would actually be competent. You understand what I mean? The airstrikes were to make sure that there were no American lives lost in this mission to serve this warrant and effect this arrest and do two things. One, stop the head of the largest cartel in Venezuela, stop the man who was also surging Tren de Aragua, one of the most violent, barbaric, almost I'm failing to find enough adjectives to describe how disgustingly, decadently lethal Tren de Aragua is or was. But he's the one who made sure that the Tren de Aragua gang was among the thousands and thousands of caravan members that were surging into the United States when Biden opened up the border and rolled out the red carpet for terrorists from the Middle East and from gang members from Central America and Latin America. So, the reality is that, those people were here because of Maduro. So what Trump did is America first because it's protecting America. It is also liberating at the same time, depressed and oppressed people of Venezuela. So that's what this was all about. I didn't know this was coming, obviously, and that's what makes it so beautiful. The Democrats are screaming, how come you didn't tell us? This is an act of war, and only Congress can declare war. You have to let us know when you're going to do something like this or when you want to do something like this. And the reason why none of us knew Saturday morning that this was coming is because we didn't tell the Democrats, because it was a perfectly operated and executed mission. And what was the old adage from World War II? Loose lips sink ships. You tell a Democrat in Congress we're about to go in and depose a socialist dictator. We're going to arrest him, bring him back to the United States alive, charge him, or not charge him, but arraign him and bring him up on the charges for which he was already indicted. And we're going to go get him. You tell one Democrat that, and that's on the front page of the New York Times the next morning. Or it's on the New York Times, excuse me, and the Washington Post websites almost immediately. Because you know that. Loose lips sink ships, and Democrat hacks who are anti-American and anti-Trump would have absolutely leaked that to the press. And that would have put American troops in harm's way to announce that. Certainly, it would have sent Maduro into hiding. They would have done whatever they do to make sure that he's protected from all threats and so forth. So it's, that's the reason why it was so important to keep everything under wraps. That's why it was so important to make sure that, only the people who had to know knew. And the execution was flawless. I mean, literally, not a single American harmed. It was quick and easy. It was done in about an hour. It took about an hour to go in and get, the dictatorial socialist regime leader from his palace and into an American chopper or plane and brought to the United States. It took about an hour to run that whole operation. It was executed perfectly. Oh, the Equalizer is what it was called, by the way. Thank you, Jeff, in the chat. The Equalizer. I've seen all of them. The Denzel Equalizer series, and for whatever reason I was blanking on the name of it. But yeah, real terrorists and so forth have security that is a lot more difficult to beat than just one guy defeating 75 armed agents protecting, bodyguards protecting a tyrant like Maduro. You can't just send Denzel in there to snap necks and use bows and arrows and take these people out. It takes a lot more than that. And what did it take in this case? It took massive amounts of airstrikes. All right, let me share some of this with you because the American military power was on display for all to see when they put this plan in motion. I've got Trump, and I'm going to share Trump, but I've also got Pete Hegseth and Dan Raisin Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, on Saturday morning when they were discussing and explaining exactly what went down. And I think Raisin Kane does the best job of this. There was really, President Trump did the weave on Saturday morning, or Saturday, I guess it turned out to be afternoon, shortly after noon. President Trump went off the prompter. And he was talking about the strike. He was talking about Maduro, but then he started to do the weave and did his thing. And I thought it was the wrong time for it. I got much more out of Hegseth and Raisin Kane and Rubio at the press conference about what we did in Venezuela and why we did it and how we did it than I did from the president. And that's not to knock our president, because I support the fact that he did this. But the messaging to me was a little bit muddy when he started to do the weave. I got much more clarity of message from Dan Raisin Kane. So I want to share some of this with you. So, and particularly in the chat, watch this closely because I want to see what you have to say about this. Let me pop this up. Let's see if we can do this together. Yeah, let me switch that over. And here we go. So this is Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Raisin Kane, letting everybody know exactly how it went down.
At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49, and there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones.
I don't know about you, but I absolutely love every second of that. I just love listening to him lay out how it went down. Again, without giving up anything with respect to operational security, because as President Trump pointed out, and also Raising Cane and Hegseth said, we may not be done. If they don't change, leadership, and we're talking about to the opposition leader, to Machado, we may have to come back. We're not going to allow the people in Venezuela to continue to operate drug cartels just because Maduro's gone. We're not going to allow them to continue to repress their people as well. So that was Raising Cane. Let me give you a little bit about what Pete Hegseth had to say in this fantastic operation as well. Let me pull up the Secretary of War. And I love that, by the way, that we are now calling him what he is, the Secretary of War. Used to be Secretary of Defense, but here's Hegseth and what he had to say.
Well, we're postured, and the president said the blockade continues, no oil going in and out, no drug boats allowed to traffic in the Caribbean or the East Pac, so we're still poised there. This was a law enforcement exercise. It was the Department of War in support of the Department of Justice pulling out an indicted person who ultimately will face justice, and Marco was clear there that this is not something you notify Congress about beforehand, but were there to be more or extensions to this, of course we'll keep Congress involved. They're our partners, and we would do so.
Yeah, and keeping Congress involved is one thing. Informing them ahead of time so that they can leak, because they have proven that they cannot be trusted, so that they can leak, operational information that could put troops in harm's way. Something they should absolutely never have to do. And Pete Hegseth was right about that. And Marco Rubio is the one who spent the time on the weekend shows yesterday on Sunday schooling, just kicking ass and taking the names of people like Margaret Brennan and George Stephanopoulos. He was making the rounds and defending the operational planning and the carrying out of the mission. And yes, the constitutionality and the legality of these strikes. As the Secretary of State, that's kind of his job, and he does it exceptionally well. But he took down Brennan, Stephanopoulos, and Kristen Welker all in one day. And I'll give you some of that in a moment. But before I do that, what I want to do now, though, is have a little bit of fun because of what I was discussing earlier on. This was the Newsmax session. Thank you, Brian, my buddy from TNAM, the New American Media, who's in the chat right now. He heard me talking about this, obviously, and I didn't figure I would be able to pull this up, but he actually shared this link with me and with people in the chat. So why the hell not? This is what I was discussing before about how annoying it is. I have been, most of the bitching I do to my wife. Whenever something will be on TV and I'll see, who does this is, for example, Rachel Campos Duffy. Rachel Campos Duffy on Fox, the wife of Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. She's Latina. Okay, fine. But she speaks perfect English with no accent until she gets to a Hispanic surname or name. And then suddenly Nicolas Maduro, which is how she is speaking and everything else, becomes Nicolas Maduro. And she's one of, and I would gripe to my wife, why do they do that? And all of the time, and I've never heard another person complain about it, ever, until this segment on Newsmax. And I saw this and I played it for my wife and I sent it to my kids and I said, this is what I was talking about. And everybody got a good laugh out of it. But I'm so glad to know that I'm not the only one. I thought I was, but here's proof that I am not. And just for a little levity, just for a little break, before I come back to what Rubio and Trump had to say about the Venezuelan action on Saturday. Here we go.
On another note, tonight, the New York City mayoral debate last night, but I'm less interested in what the candidates actually said, and I'm more interested in why we keep doing this.
Government Affairs reporter Melissa Russo, senior politics editor at Politico Sally Goldenberg, and Telemundo 47 anchor Rosarena Breton. This is a 2-hour debate.
All right, so we have talked about this, and I just don't get why we do this, who started it, when this started. But whenever it is a Spanish name, we are all suddenly required and expected to shapeshift into the perfect Spanish accent. Normal, everyday news people do it all the time. They forget years of training. They forget their non-regional diction. That Telemundo anchors, by the way, Rosarena Brenton. Just say Rosarena Brenton. But for whatever reason, we all feel the need to pronounce it like we're living in Mexico, like we're living in a country where Spanish is the native tongue. That's not the case here in the U.S. Rosarena Britannia. He said it. I couldn't understand what he was saying. As I've said before, I am Irish. And if I was moderating that debate, would the host introduce me as Robert James Finnerty, don't you know, the little lad? That he is, Robert James Finnerty. If the host was Chinese, would they then introduce that person with a Chinese accent? I don't think so. So stop doing it when they're Spanish. Just stop it. Also, we don't need to say all three names when they are Spanish. No one describes me as Robert James Finnerty. I'm just Rob Finnerty. We don't need to say Kilmar Abregu Garcia. It's just Kilmar Garcia. I don't know who started this, but enough's enough. Stop. Just stop.
I cannot.
Can you dig it?
It is impossible for me to love that enough. I didn't do the Irish comparison. That was awesome, Finnerty. That was perfect. That's exactly what I've been talking about. Anyway, I'm watching about 3 hours of coverage, excuse me, on Saturday morning. My wife's got the TV on. That's when I first learned about everything that was going on. She got up before I did. And she's got on, do you see what happened in Venezuela? Blah, blah. I'm learning. And for 3 hours, all the way up until Trump finally spoke sometime afternoon, 12:30, almost 1 o'clock, whatever it was. I'm watching the Fox anchor, and I cannot remember his name for the life of me. But the Fox anchor is speaking in perfect English until every time it came time to say the name of the Venezuelan dictator, Maduro became Maduro. And I was just, again, incensed by it. So phenomenal job. Thank you, Brian. I needed that levity this morning. My guy, Brian, hooked me up. He's got a great podcast too, by the way. It's called The New American Media, and it's on daily at around noontime. If you want to follow him on Rumble as well. Okay. So the Democrats are crying and whining. Why are they crying and whining? I don't think it's any real secret, if we're being honest. They're crying and whining because one of their own was just given the FO of the FAFO. Nicolas Maduro has been effing around and now finding out. He's been effing around for decades, just like Chavez before him, and now he found out, and they hate that a socialist. Remember, all of this happened 3 days after a socialist, and I don't think this was a coincidence. I don't think it was an accident. I don't believe in coincidences for the most part. President Trump probably, once he knew that Mamdani, Zoltar, as I call him, Mamdani, had won the primary and was going to win the general election, and maybe once he won the general election for mayor of New York City, knowing that he's a socialist, knowing that he's a communist, knowing that he's a Marxist, and those things are also very closely interrelated. If you are one, you are all of the above. But knowing that Mamdani is a socialist and he was about to take over and he was going to get sworn in at midnight, New Year's Eve into New Year's Day, that Trump probably figured we're going to greet socialist Mamdani with something special. And 2 days after that, boom, here's your socialist. Now wearing the iron bracelets, now under arrest, and now facing charges, and now going to be, treated the way socialists should, to be 100% honest. I'm not saying for a fact that happened, but I don't generally believe in coincidences. They're celebrating the socialist in New York City on Thursday morning. New Year's morning after he gets sworn in, and 2 mornings later, Saturday, also in New York, here's a socialist in our jail, and he's facing the charges associated with this indictment. So it's a huge, huge symbolic statement, I think, that Trump made by doing this when he did. So anyway, the reason they're crying, like I said, on the left is because they lost one of their own. One of their own is going down here. And when I say they, I don't mean just every rank and file New Yorker who's a socialist. I'm talking about the political elites and the celebrity elites. Do you know, have you seen the long list of celebrities that have been defending socialist Venezuela for decades, despite the fact that the people went there from being, like I said, well off and middle class, average Venezuelans living very, very happy lives. You know, everything is fine for them, to them scrounging and scrambling to kill rats in the streets for food, which, by the way, is a tenet of all socialism. Every socialist regime ever has starved its people. And I'm talking about from Soviet socialism to Chinese socialism. And again, use socialism and communism interchangeably. But I'm talking about the killing fields of the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot. I'm talking about North Korea. I mean, we've gone through this before. As a matter of fact, I pointed it out last Thursday or Friday, or I guess it would have been Friday, that I did an entire newsletter. Strictly speaking, this week, I did an entire newsletter. I thought it was right before the New York mayoral election. And it turned out to be November 9th, right after the election. And it was basically, look at what New York just did to itself. And the whole newsletter, instead of being its normal, 5 things to know and 5 things to do, it was all about 5 socialist regimes to know and 5 things. I don't have it in front of me right now to pull up again, but it was basically all 10 items were dedicated to the horrors of socialism. And I wanted the people, who read our newsletter to know that what New York just did to itself was pretty much suicidal. They invited that to lead them. And then on the day of Mamdani's swearing in, which again happened at midnight on New Year's Eve, on that very day, he announced, yes, communism has arrived. Remember this?
We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism.
Just not even like subtlety here. Just collectivism is on the way. Individualism, which means individuals, which means people having their own rights and their own agency to live their lives as they wish. Gone. Done. No more individuality, no more individuals, because collectivism is here. Everything is going to be for the collective. I wrote about this for an entire newsletter on November 9th. I did a little bit more, actually, for yesterday's newsletter. I should probably pull this up too. Let me share this with you, because if you are not already subscribing to Strictly Speaking This Week, my newsletter, and the full issue like this only comes out once a week. It's every Sunday morning at 6 a.m. I've been sending out daily messages, daily newsletter messages, basically to tell you what's coming up on the show, like we did this morning. Hopefully you can see that. I'm making that as big and full screen as I can do it. Let's see here. How's that looking for you? Okay, yeah, that should help a little bit. But I wrote about it in yesterday morning's newsletter. And to those of you who are subscribers, thank you. Share the link with others to make them subscribers too. You can see it. It's at the top of your newsletter. See that subscribe to the newsletter red button there? Right click it, copy the link to it, and send that to other people and tell them to subscribe. But yesterday morning's newsletter that came out specifically talked about what it means that we deposed this socialist dictator in Venezuela because of the horrors of socialism overall. And it was an item number 1. So if you are not getting the newsletter, just a little layout for you. This is volume 2, issue 1, because the calendar year flipped over. So it's the second year that we've been doing this, even though it's not quite a full year. We did 44 issues. We started this in around March of last year, March, I think it was, or April. Anyway, volume 2, issue 1. So you get a greeting and an introduction, just a little rundown of what's coming up in the issue. And then each day, for those who don't know, don't subscribe, you get 5 things to know each week. And it's the top 5 news items, according to me, from either the week that was or what is coming. And 5 things to know. And number 1 was, and we'll come back to it since this is the point of the conversation, Trump makes Democrats openly defend a socialist dictator in midterm election. That's just how I see it. I mean, you can talk about, as I did already, the freeing and the liberating of the Venezuelan people and the protection of American citizens by, getting rid of the one of the leading cartel members. Remember, Maduro wasn't just allowing cartels to operate in Venezuela, exporting tons of drugs in order of which they get a percentage of the profits. He gets a percentage of the profits. He wasn't just letting that happen with cartels in Venezuela. He was a cartel leader. And that's why this matters. So, the way I phrased it here wasn't about that. It was more about the Democrat reaction to it. Trump, in an election year, the midterm election year, first thing he did, January 3rd, was get Democrats to defend, not this time terrorists. They've already done that. They defend Hamas. They defend Hezbollah. They defended Boko Haram when Trump struck in Nigeria on Christmas Day. They defended terrorists like ISIS and Boko Haram then. They defend the worst of the worst all of the time. But now in this election year, Trump got them to defend a socialist dictator and cartel leader who's poisoning the U.S. and killing scores of Americans with those drugs. It's quite a remarkable thing. Anyway, I'll come back to the text of that. Number 2, obviously what we covered in a great deal for a great period of time last week, the Minnesota fraud scandal with the daycare centers. And there's a link to each of these, by the way, as you can see. Number 3 is the Ohio version of that. Mike DeWine's response to the Ohio Somali daycare fraud allegations. And yes, he recognized that a lot of it was going on, but he said, through his spokesperson, Dan Tierney, it's what you got to take. Fraud is the cost of doing business. Wow. As I said, that statement alone should end careers. We're going to talk to Tom Z about that and more coming up, like I said, in the second hour of the podcast this morning. Collectivism's warmth lasts only until the bodies are cold. And of course, as I said, I did that because of Mamdani's straight up.
We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism.
You can't, sometimes you just can't. I don't know if I can finish that sentence. The warmth of collectivism was made to sound like it actually is a positive thing. It brings death. So that warmth only lasts until the piles of bodies have gone cold. Come back to that too. In this one, did you even see this one? Holy Nikes. I got so mad when I first saw this story. 25 years after Muslims attacked the United States in the worst terror attack in the history of the country and killed 3,000 Americans, 25 years later, Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, ordered the new World Trade Center tower, One World Trade Center, which replaced the Twin Towers, ordered it to be lit up along with all of the other landmarks in New York, green, in honor of Muslims, in honor of Islam. I would love to put Kathy Hochul in a room with the families of the 9/11 victims who jumped to their deaths, forced out of the windows, either that or burned to death in a raging hot fire that you can never even imagine, or jump 95 stories to your death. I'd love to get her in a room with the families of people that were on the jets that slammed into those buildings and have her explain to them why the new building that went up in the place of those is going to be an ode to the killers who killed your family members, an homage to the murderers of 9/11. That happened. It's not even a one-day thing. Apparently, it's a month thing. As you can see, January is Muslim American Heritage Month in New York. New freaking York. Ground zero. The epicenter of the horror. Directed One World Trade to be lit up, along with 15 other landmarks, lit up in green in honor of Muslim American communities. The nation's worst governor this side of this, I'm sorry, I don't pull punches when I write. The nation's worst governor this side of Tim Walz and Gavin Newsom explained that the gesture features the heritage and culture of Muslim Americans and celebrates the contributions of one of the state's largest and most diverse populations. Apparently, no one explained to her that the heritage and culture of Islam is to kill and destroy everything and everyone that doesn't submit itself to Islam. A point made clear when they murdered nearly 3,000 people on September 11th on the very site Hochul has chosen to honor with that green lighting. And this was just my opinion. It's a supposition, and I do believe it to be true. New York City Mayor Mamdani, who in addition to being a radical socialist, is also a radical Islamist, likely had a hand in Hochul's decision, which should be a solid indicator of things to come as he tightens his grip on the throat of the nation's financial epicenter, which is what New York is. We could go on about the insensitivity and the insanity of the decision, but not without pulling out a glossary of the most vile and profane words that exist within the English language. So we'll stop there. And I almost screamed a couple of them here. And yeah, I filtered myself. Kiss my ass. I said it's strictly speaking unfiltered, but I still don't want to drop F-bombs on the podcast. What if there are kids walking by in somebody's room where they're watching this on their computer, phone, or tablet or whatever? So I'm going to, even though it's unfiltered, I'm still going to filter a little bit. Audio video of the week in the newsletter this week came from this program. Last week, we talked with Bernie Moreno, Senator Bernie Moreno, from his vacation spot, by the way, which is his home. He didn't have his full-on setup with the lights like I have on right now. He used his cell phone because he wanted to talk to his constituents about the things that mattered so much. So he came on this program here, and it was a very, very important interview. And the link to it that you see there with Senator Moreno and myself, that interview begins at the 1 hour. That's a little misleading. I should have put 1:00:25. It's the 1 hour and 25 minute mark of the broadcast. He came on around 11:25 last Wednesday, I think it was. But if you didn't watch that interview with Senator Moreno, I think you'll like it. I think you'll be inspired by it, and you should. It's on the channel right now. You can just go back to, I think it was Wednesday, and look for that and watch it. But again, if you get the newsletter that we're featuring right now, if you already subscribe to it, you'll see these things delivered in your inbox every Sunday morning. 5 things to do this week. So we have 5 things to know this week, and then the 5 things to do this week are for, these are action items. Some that are very specifically directed, some you can do on your own time to help your own understanding of certain things. Demand accountability from Ohio officials. The governor's office, your state legislators, the Ohio auditor, Keith Faber, and demand answers. When were audits initiated? Which agencies are under active investigation? How much taxpayer money is suspected to have been lost? What controls are in place today to stop further abuse when it comes to the Somali daycare centers in Ohio? Just as bad, if not worse, than what they are in Minnesota. All right. One thing that I can tell you about that, just super quick, and maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't. There were 45 Somali daycare owners applied for their licenses to open on the very same day. How is that even remotely possible? Even if we were a world filled with coincidences, how on earth could 45 of them? And oh, by the way, they were all operating and opening under the same umbrella organization. If that just doesn't scream to you money laundering, tax dollar stealing scheme, I don't know what you're watching. I don't know what you're paying attention to then. If we're being 100% honest, it's as plain as day. Talk about that a little bit with Tom Z coming up in the second hour. Things to do, 5 things to do, right? Drop a dime. If you see and know any of those things, Columbus residents, doesn't have to just be Columbus, but this is largely centered in Columbus with that massive population of Somalis. If you see anything, Auditor of State Keith Faber has instituted a new hotline. He's put together 1-866-FRAUD-OH or ohioauditor.gov. Report it. Drop a dime on these people. If you live near or work near one of these buildings that is empty, that has no children coming or going, and it's got a sign that says daycare, if you got a little bit of a hint, that fraud is happening, or if you have inside information about home healthcare fraud, which is another huge one, drop a dime. 866-FRAUD-OH, 866-FRAUD-OH. There it is. Number 3, that's about this show. It continues to be one of my most important missions to grow this show so that we can have an impact. Help us beat the algorithms. These are the things that Rumble likes. Rumble likes when you hit the thumbs up button. Rumble likes when you leave a comment on the live show you're watching or any of the previous shows or videos on the channel that you can watch. Turn them on, click like, and leave a comment on them. Rumble likes when you follow and subscribe to this channel. Hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button, and then turn on the notifications for Rumble on your smartphone so you know when we put new content out there. When Rumble sees that kind of engagement, they say, oh, popular show, people are liking this, and they push it out to more people. It forces an algorithmic push to other people, which is the only way we make this work. All right. It's like digital door knocking too. Let everybody know. Copy the link to the channel and send it to everybody that you know on text. I did this yesterday on text for about an hour. I texted a whole bunch of people I knew with this information. Do the same thing. Number 4 in things to do, learn the unauthorized history of socialism. This is a Fox Nation special, 6 parts. If you don't subscribe to Fox Nation, then you can't watch it. And I'm not going to tell you to. If you're going to spend your subscription dollars anywhere, I'd like you to subscribe to this channel. And the founders, I'll get into what we're going to do shortly, a little bit later on. But this is on the subscription-only Fox Nation streaming network. And it's a phenomenal piece of journalism. It really is. It takes you through everything, the history of socialism from, its earliest origins to where it is today, which is, of course, spreading in the United States with Mamdani. And by the way, it's kind of funny because this is just a screenshot of their promo for one of their episodes. And as you can see, socialists in the same picture, AOC, Bernie Sanders, and Nicolas Maduro. One of these 3 was just arrested. The other 2 should be. Anyway, if you want to learn more about why it's so dangerous and why what we are doing in deposing people like this is so important and why it's America first, watch that 6-part series if you can. I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money. Obviously, I'm going to ask you to spend it on us. I'm going to ask you to donate and keep our show growing and keep it afloat. Hit the Rumble Rants $sign down at the bottom of the page because it's the only way we can keep this thing going. But if you do have the chance to watch this on Fox Nation, highly recommended. You'll learn a lot about it. Just like you will from the newsletter that I mentioned I wrote in November. I'm going to re-release it. I'm going to send it out to everybody who's a subscriber on Wednesday, day after tomorrow. I'm going to put that out there. In addition to the daily update of what's coming up on this show, I'm going to send you that that issue of the newsletter from November 9th after the New York City mayoral election, because you're going to want to know. We talked about this last week, and some people said, can you send it out again? Yes, I can, and I will on Wednesday. Look for it then, so people know what socialism is all about. Number 5, was that number 4? Oh, yeah, I guess it was. So this is number 5. Okay. The Final Betrayal, a book by my friend Patrick Wood. If you don't understand what technocracy is and its threat to our individual freedoms, then you need to learn it. Patrick Wood has been studying technocracy since the 70s. Seriously, he's written 3 books on the subject. I think this is his 4th. We're going to have him on this show. We're going to do an extensive 1 or 2 hour interview with Patrick Wood in which we dissect all aspects of modern technology and the move toward technocracy, letting the technocrats run the country, unelected technocrats. It's extraordinarily dangerous, but that's a great read. In fact, just so you know, I'm not BSing with it. There it is. I'm reading it. How far am I in now? Probably about 2/3 of the way in right now. But you want to read that book. Again, it'll teach you a lot about what is happening to us. So, all right. That's a lot of promotional stuff, but I feel like it's all valid and worthy stuff. So what I want to do now, I want to give you a little bit more of what was said yesterday on the Sunday shows. This is going to be a little bit of a montage of sorts of the Marco Rubio, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, his Sunday beatdowns of the left-wing talk show hosts. We'll start with what he did to Kristen Welker. Yeah, Kristen Welker on NBC's Meet the Press. Marco Rubio, by the way, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree with this. Marco Rubio, every time he is given a new responsibility to talk to the people by way of a press conference or these kind of interviews, President Trump has, put him front and center of so many things. Marco Rubio continues to make his case, even though he's not making a case. It's just happening organically. Marco Rubio is making his case that maybe 2028 and the nomination for Vice President Vance isn't settled. This guy is winning hearts and minds of MAGA, America First, conservatives all across this country. Every time he talks, he is so good, so knowledgeable, so in-depth. He is not the man who ran for president against Trump in the primaries in 2016 when Trump dubbed him Little Marco. And people are talking about him, being a part of the Gang of Eight and all of these things. He is not the same guy at all. Just like Vice President Vance isn't the same guy. In 2016, he was condemning and criticizing President Trump, or then candidate Trump, vociferously. Hell, I'm not the same guy. In 2016, I was all about Team Ted Cruz. I was criticizing Trump on radio. But my point being, Marco Rubio is making a massive, massive name for himself, and he is just becoming a champion of conservatism. I'm just saying, Vance Rubio 2028, or Rubio Vance 2028, or Rubio versus Vance in a primary showdown, with Ron DeSantis being maybe the third guy that could throw his hat into that ring and play in that league. I don't know, but we've got some serious talent. We have some serious talent. Okay. So this is Marco Rubio with Kristen Welker on NBC's Meet the Press defending the Venezuelan operation that led to the arrest of and the current detainment of Nicolas Maduro. Here we go.
Why does the United States need to take over the Venezuelan oil industry?
Well, we don't need to. First of all, let me go back up. We don't need Venezuela's oil. We have plenty of oil in the United States. What we're not going to allow is for the oil industry in Venezuela to be controlled by adversaries of the United States. You have to understand, why does China need their oil? Why does Russia need their oil? Why does Iran need their oil? They're not even in this continent. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live. And we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
Have specific oil companies?
We also want to see that oil and the proceeds from it. Hold on. We want to see the oil proceeds of that country benefit the people of Venezuela. Why have 8 million people left Venezuela? 8 million, the single largest mass migration probably in modern history, left Venezuela in 2014 because all the wealth of that country was stolen to the benefit of Maduro and his cronies in the regime, but not to the benefit of people of Venezuela. You know how destabilizing 8 million migrants is? The number one fear that Brazil has, that Colombia has, that all these countries in the region have about what's happening in Venezuela and our involvement is they're afraid of another mass migration event. That's what they fear. This is deeply destabilizing stuff. It's not going to continue to happen. They are not going to come from outside of our hemisphere, destabilize our region in our own backyard, and us have to pay the price for it. Not under President Trump.
Not under President Trump's watch. Marco Rubio, again, just an absolutely perfect statesman. He's perfect for the role he's in as Secretary of State, but he suffers no fools, and he will not let people like Kristen Welker frame the narrative about what this is all about. It's not about stealing oil at all, but we're also not going to allow these people to come in here and destabilize the region. That is why this is national security. It is America first, because the left continues to scream, Trump says America first. Why is he doing all of these, foreign operations? He also said no new wars. Why is he declaring war on Venezuela? And obviously this is not. He liberated Venezuela, for crying out loud. All right, so Marco moved from Kristen Welker on NBC's Meet the Press to go to CBS and Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, beatdown number 2.
He's still in place. The defense minister, who has deep ties to Russia, $15 million price on his head, he is still in place. I'm confused. Are they still wanted by the United States? Why didn't you arrest them if you are taking out the narco-terrorist regime.
You're confused? I don't know why that's confusing to you.
They're still in
I mean, It's
power.
very simple. You're not going to go in and wrap up. But you can't go. You're going to go in and suck up 5 people. They're already complaining about this one operation. Imagine the howls we would have from everybody else if we actually had to go and stay there 4 days to capture 4 other people. We got the top priority. The number 1 person on the list was the guy who claimed to be the president of the country that he was not. And he was arrested along with his wife, who was also indicted. And that was a pretty sophisticated and frankly complicated operation.
It was.
It is not easy to land helicopters in the middle of the largest military base in the country. The guy lived on a military base. Land within 3 minutes, kick down his door, grab him, put him in handcuffs, read him his rights, put him in a helicopter, and leave the country without losing any American or any American assets. That's not an easy mission. And you're asking me, why didn't we do that in 5 other places at the same time? I mean, that's absurd. I do think this is one of the most, daring, complicated, sophisticated missions this country has carried out in a very long time. Tremendous credit to the U.S. military personnel who did it. It was unbelievable, and tremendous success. And today, an indicted drug trafficker who was not the legitimate president of Venezuela, who we don't recognize, the Biden administration didn't recognize, 60-something countries don't recognize, the European Union doesn't recognize, and many countries in Latin America don't recognize. He was a indicted drug trafficker. He was arrested. His wife was arrested, also
but the others who are also indicted are still
system of courts.
The others who are also indicted are still in place. So that's the point of my questioning there. But you talked about not being the legitimate
So you wanted
president.
us to land in 5 other military bases?
No, I'm asking why you chose that this was the limit of the military operation. But to your point that you just made, that
what the hell is wrong with this woman?
He was the guy who was claiming to be the president.
Yeah, what the hell is wrong with this woman? See, this is why I give Marco Rubio so much credit. He's got the ability to keep his composure. I would have called her out for what she is, which is a blithering idiot. He's already explained to you why you can't do that. He's already explained to you why the others are still there, because we had to get the head of the snake. We couldn't get all elements of it. We couldn't get them all at the same time. That kind of a scale, it would have gotten American soldiers killed. They have to do this rather one at a time. And obviously the most important one was the indicted Nicolas Maduro. So, she just Margaret Brennan, you would think that she would stop having people like J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio on her show. J.D. Vance is making a career as vice president of the United States. And even back when he was a senator from here in Ohio, J.D. Vance is making a career out of embarrassing Margaret Brennan. I mean, seriously, she is just this side of blithering. And I got to give her credit. If you're going to be an idiot, you might as well go full blithering. She's just about there. But she's getting humiliated by J.D. Vance every time he's on, and every time Marco Rubio is on as well. She's not she's in waters way too deep for her. She's just, that's not her league. All right. So after embarrassing Kristen Welker, and then after embarrassing Margaret Brennan, he went over to George Stephanopoulos on ABC this week.
Let me ask the question again. What is the legal authority for the United States to be running Venezuela?
Well, I explained to you what our goals are and how we're going to use the leverage to make it happen. As far as what our legal authority is on the quarantine, I'm very simple. We have court orders. These are sanctioned boats, and we get orders from courts to go after and seize these sanctions. So I don't know, is a court not a legal authority?
So is the United States running Venezuela right now?
Well, I've explained once again, I'll do it one more time. What we are running is the direction that this is going to moving forward. And that is, we have leverage. This leverage we are using and we intend to use. We started using already. You can see where they are running out of storage capacity. In a few weeks, they're going to have to start pumping oil unless they make changes. And that leverage that we have with the armada of boats that are currently positioned allow us to seize any sanctioned boats coming into or out of Venezuela, loaded with oil or on its way in to pick up oil, and we can pick and choose which ones we go after. We have court orders for each one. That will continue to be in place until the people who have control over the levers of power in that country make changes that are not just in the interest of the people of Venezuela, but are in the interest of the United States and the things that we care about. That's what we intend to do. The legal authority is the court orders that we have.
When the president was asked yesterday who will be running Venezuela, he said it was you, he said it was the defense secretary, he said it was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Are you running Venezuela right now?
George, I've explained again that the leverage that we have here is the leverage of the quarantine. So that is a Department of War operation, conducting, in some cases, law enforcement functions with the Coast Guard on the seizure of these boats. I'm obviously very intricately involved in these policies. And by the way, very intricately involved in moving forward and what we hope to see some of these changes being addressed. Unfortunately, the person that was there before, who was not the legitimate president of the country, was someone we could not work with.
So there is Secretary of State Marco Rubio. I wanted to give you a bunch of him, and I gave you a little bit of Pete Hegseth as well. And I gave you Dan Raising Kane a little bit earlier too, because I felt like the mission was articulated so perfectly by them. I didn't give you much of President Trump. I didn't give any of President Trump so far, because President Trump, while he made the announcement on Saturday morning, didn't stick to the prompter and the facts of the situation. He did the weave, and he weaved into a lot of different places. And sometimes that is fantastic, and it's exactly what is needed. And sometimes I think clarity is needed instead. And I didn't get a lot of it from him. And some of what he said, Secretary Rubio had to kind of walk back a little bit and provide clarity too. So it's a little bit different. When the president says we're going to run the country of Venezuela, it makes it sound like we are being occupiers. We're taking over land that doesn't belong to us and these kinds of things. And I just think the language and the verbiage should probably be cleaned up a little bit. So I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on the mission at hand. And I think that gave us a good deal of it. One other clip I'm going to play before I bring in my friend Tom Zawistowski, who's in the green room, is this is a clip from, well, it's from a Venezuelan. Because this matters. I asked you in the first 5-10 minutes of the podcast this morning if you saw any of the videos of people in Venezuela, in Caracas in particular, just celebrating and dancing in the streets because their nightmarish and hellish existence of starvation and famine and poverty and so forth is coming to an end with Maduro being taken out. They were tearing down his giant mural signs, images of him from the buildings. And it reminded me of when, again, not to compare this to the Iraq War, we were in an extended, ground war in Iraq when we got rid of Saddam Hussein. But when Saddam was deposed and was captured, taken out, the people there tore down his statues and danced upon it. And smacked it with their shoes, and they dragged portions of it behind trucks because they were living such miserable existences under the authoritarian, tyranny of Saddam. And well, that's the same way with the people of Venezuela. If you think we waged war on Venezuela Saturday, then you should listen to the Venezuelans who are celebrating and cheering, and they're all over the internet as well. So that's why I want to share this one with you, just to kind of give you a small taste. There's nobody from Venezuela, either in Venezuela now or who, sought asylum to come to the United States to escape what the existence was like there. There's nobody who is sad that Nicolas Maduro has been held to account or will be soon with his trial for his myriad crimes. Listen. I just realized that she was not on camera there. My apologies. I wanted to share that with you, that image of her, but it's okay. There she is. That's the person you just heard speaking. I'm going to give you one more, especially since you didn't get to see that person, but let me give you one more example of this.
Salí de Venezuela por eventos traumáticos horribles. Cuando yo salí en plena decadencia, cuando la gente solo comía mangos, yo vi a un amigo mío comer perros allá. Es increíble. Yo no
I'm
sé.
going to pause there for obvious reasons. You're reading what this Venezuelan asylee is saying here in Spanish. I had friends eating dogs because socialism brings starvation. It brings famine every single time, which is why, and I don't want to get into it again, go off topic here, New York City's election of a socialist mayor is just so mind-blowing. They don't know the history of socialism. And in Venezuela, this is the reality of socialism. Keep reading the comments from the Spanish-speaking Venezuelan national who is celebrating this moment.
Porque aquí hay personas con banderas de Venezuela, son venezolanos, saben lo que pasa en Venezuela. Es como cuando tienen las banderas de Cuba, saben lo que pasa en Cuba. La mamá, la esposa de mi papá es cubana y ella me dice las cosas tan horrendas que pasaron allá. Dios mío, ¿en serio pueden culpar a... Está bien, se inventan el capitalismo, todo esto, pero es increíble lo que pasa, Dios mío. ¿Cómo puede ser que estas personas estén acá defendiendo a un dictador que tiene el helicoide, el centro de tortura más grande de Latinoamérica?
I didn't bring that part up before, did I? This individual remembering not only the starvation, but the torture rooms brought by Nicolas Maduro and Hugo Chavez before him. Wondering, what are these people out here flying Venezuelan flags protesting? They're protesting the arrest of the person who did all of these things to us. It just doesn't make any sense. And again, there are more and more of these people who are talking about how appreciative they are what President Trump did here. And I haven't even gotten into the aspects of this that I want to, because I'm not going to have time. But yeah, here's another one. A lesson on Venezuela from the uninformed. Here's another one. This one's a little shorter. Let me give you this one. I like this one too. But again, these people are celebrating what Trump did.
Venezuela, Venezuelan people are criticizing Trump for what he did in Venezuela. They say he bombed and kidnapped our president. No. Let me be clear. That man was never our president. He's a dictator. We didn't vote for him. Our elections were stolen. And when we protested, our kids were sent to prison. Minors were tortured. Girls were forced to prostitute themselves in prisons just to get food, to get a piece of bread. And where were all of you then? Where were all of you, liberals? Where were all of you? Where were all of you? You said nothing. You did nothing. But now you suddenly care about international law? I mean, now you all talk about human rights? Maduro didn't lead Venezuela. He kidnapped an entire country. So, no, Trump didn't kidnap anyone. No, he did not. He removed our kidnapper. And for that, we're thankful. You can divide politics all you want, but don't tell Venezuelans, do not tell Venezuelans how to feel about being free from a dictatorship.
Just real quick, I'm going to play about 10 seconds more of that because it went so fast. This is why what President Trump just did here matters so much more. Is it about America first? Yes. Is it about getting rid of the drug cartel kingpin, Maduro? Yes. Is it about financial stability in the region with respect to their oil? Yes. But it's also about literally saving lives and liberating people who are living under torturous conditions. Just 10 seconds of this again.
Vote for him. Our elections were stolen. And when we protested, our kids were sent to prison.
When we protested Maduro's stealing of the election, our kids were sent to prison.
Minors were tortured.
Minors were tortured.
Girls were forced to prostitute themselves in prisons just to get food.
That's it. I just wanted to hit those 10 seconds again, just to let people know. And then he went on to this young man went on to excoriate liberals. Where the hell were you when all of that was happening? You're all flying Venezuelan flags and free Maduro. Where were you when he was doing this to all of us? If you care about Venezuela or Venezuelans, why didn't you rescue us from him a long time ago? And now you want to castigate Trump for it? It's just, it's reprehensible. All right, let me bring in my friend, Tom Zawistowski. Tom and I were chatting with each other early this morning because Tom is an early riser. We were texting with one another, rather, and talking about a whole host of things, including Venezuela and including the Somali scams going on in Minnesota, but more specifically here in our home state of Ohio. Tom is the president of the We the People Convention. Website you should check out is We the People. Now I'm going to have to mess it up. We the People. It's WTC, right? Tom, help me out. WTCconvention.org.
WeThePeopleConvention.org.
We the People. Okay. But because the abbreviation of WTC for WTP for We the People, it always messes me up because that's part of the Twitter handle, right? Your Twitter handle.
WTPC. Yeah. Tom Z, WTPC on X and, on most every other thing, YouTube and Facebook and all those kind of things. Good morning and glad to be with you at the new time for your show. We'll help get the word out about that.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you very much. You've been a real strong supporter. All right, Tom, there's a lot I wanted to go in with you this morning. I want to start with what we were just talking about, your reaction to what happened on Saturday morning, and then more specifically, your reaction in the last 48 hours from the left and their condemnation and their attacks on Trump. I mean, if we all know this, if Trump literally held a press conference Saturday morning and then said, here it is, it's in black and white and it's proven, we've cured cancer, they would scream in defense of cancer. Anything that would go against Trump, they would do. So with that in mind, your thoughts?
Well, Bob, the enemy is ignorance. And that's why you're here, and that's what we do at the We the People Convention is we try to educate citizens so that they're not fooled by the propaganda. I sent you and our good friend Jeff, a link to a story on X that just laid out the whole global, effort to jump on this as Donald Trump's horrible and Venezuela we're wrong for doing this. It's not real. The people that on the streets that are quote unquote protesting this, they're paid. They're just paid. They're propagandists. It's not real. And everyone needs to keep hearing those words because Americans, we want to trust the media. We want to trust the news. We want to believe it. Unfortunately, we live in a world that is basically lies and propaganda, and they have to find your show to get truth. So what's the truth here? The truth is that this is about domestic policy. This is about China and Russia and Iran. This isn't just about Venezuela and Maduro. And that's the story that's hard for Americans to get, kind of navigate because the media is all about, pictures of Maduro and the military, effort and all that. It's much bigger. I saw a video on YouTube last night, Bob, very interesting, talking about how we all know Venezuela, and Trump's talked about it. Like the oil companies are going to fund all this. It's not going to cost us anything, billions of dollars in oil. That's all true. But then there's way more to it. Venezuela has like the biggest deposits of oil that is what's dirty oil. It's real thick. It's not like the fracking we're doing in the US, the oil is almost clear. It's really easy to refine. The Venezuelan oil is really thick and hard to refine. Guess what? All of our refineries along the Gulf Coast are made to refine that kind of oil. And the big play here is instead of that oil, 830,000 barrels a day going to China, our enemy, they're not going to be coming into the United States and getting refined. They're not going to go to Cuba. They're not going to go to Russia or to Iran. And so there's a bigger picture here, Bob, and you're right to talk about that because today in the news, we're going to get down to, is this legal or not? What a stupid argument. It's already been done so many times. It's all going to be about here he is, being taken to trial. And what do they say? None of that matters to your average listener. What matters to your average listener is they're going to stop killing our kids with illegal drugs, and we're going to stop China from threatening us on the global stage, because that's who this is all about. It's about China, folks. It's all about China.
Yeah, great points all the way around. And it is about the drugs and stopping the drugs and the flow from a cartel member or cartel leader, which is exactly what Maduro was. From the standpoint of legality, they're screaming about the president's authority and all of this. What is your understanding of when a president needs to? Because Maduro, it's not like Trump just decided we're going to go get a bad guy, a dictator, a socialist dictator because of this, that just completely out of the blue. He was executing the arrest of basically a warrant for arrest of somebody who was indicted 5 years ago in 2021 under Joe Biden. It's not like this is Trump's, wild card move here where he's going to go and just like, I'm going to go arrest Vladimir Putin. No, Maduro is actually under indictment in the United States. He's being brought here to face trial for something that Trump didn't even charge him with. This was done by the Biden administration. So how could, from a legality standpoint, how could they even complain about President Trump doing what Biden essentially said should be done, which is this man should be arrested and tried for his crimes?
Yeah, again, it's distraction, it's distortion, it's just talking points, it's garbage. Ignore it. It's real simple. This was a police action, not a military action. That's what happened with Noriega in Panama. And that's what's happened throughout history. Obama did it. Every president's done it. There's no question it's legal. And it's, again, they're trying to get you to not look at what Trump did and how good it was. They're trying to get you to not look at the record of Venezuela. And this video you played, the woman saying, my family were eating dogs. That's not fiction. That's reality. I said in my podcast on Wednesday, when people question you, when you're talking about this today, people are back to work finally after a long, holiday break, and people are asking you questions like, what do you think about what Trump did here? The question you need to ask, everyone watching this podcast needs to ask is, why did no other president before Trump care enough about our kids to stop these drug cartels?
Bingo.
That's the question you need to ask. Not why did Trump do it? The question is, why did nobody else do it? And the answer to that question is bribery. The answer to that question is people in our government who've been bought and paid for, like the Bidens by China, who basically stopped them from doing this. The answer to that question is the Republicans in Trump's first term who stopped Trump from doing this in his first term because he wanted to. But they were going to impeach him and investigate Russia, and all the foolishness. This is the problem. Donald Trump is facing unbelievable forces of corruption in our government, in this world, and he's fighting a multi-front war. And they want to talk about whether what he did was legal or not. No, that's not the conversation. The conversation is, how do Americans get justice for the deaths of their children, their uncles, their brothers, all these people for decades that were killed? Nobody gave a damn. Nobody stopped it at all. Donald Trump is stopping it. That's the story.
Tom, one of my first reactions to this on Saturday was, why are they going to bring him to New York for trial? Why is he going to be tried in the Southern District of New York, which is Trump-hating country? Donald Trump couldn't get a fair trial when they were using lawfare against him there. They're not going to be, very likely to want to support Trump now that Trump is essentially the prosecutor, or the Trump administration is pushing this case. So, I understand why it has to be there. That's where the indictment came from. I would rather see him, though, tried in Florida, where there is a huge population of Venezuelans, asylees who came here. I would love to see them serving on these juries. But my question for you, Tom, is, do you think that they'll even be able to convict him in the Southern District of New York, given everything that we know about it? I can see either a judge or a jury or both, kind of wanting to stick it to Trump and just humiliate him by acquitting the guy that he brought.
Yeah, I think that the key distinction people need to understand is the trials of Trump were, like Erdogan and those guys, those were state, courts and things. This is going to be federal prosecution. And if you look at the federal, prosecutions, generally, they're not as corrupt as the local juries and things. I really have no doubt that he's going to be convicted, and he's going to be convicted quickly. The evidence is overwhelming. There will be not the political support for this. That's why these protests are going on and stuff. These fake protests. This AstroTurf stuff's going on because they're trying to influence people, but it's just going to be so overwhelmingly apparent that he committed these crimes. They're guilty of these crimes. I just think there's going to be convictions. He's going to be in a federal prison. His wife's going to be in a federal prison, just like Noriega was. I'm not that concerned about that. I think the thing that's really interesting is how this affects Cuba, how this affects, Mexico and Colombia. I mean, I really think what we're seeing here is something that we've dreamed about in America since the Cuban Missile Crisis and since John F. Kennedy was president. Could you imagine if Cuba becomes a free country again? Bob, go back and look at history. Cuba was a happening place before the communists came in. Now, I know the mafia was involved with a lot of the casinos there and things like that, but I'm telling you, a free Cuba will be an economic powerhouse and would be such a great thing to see for the Cuban people that, people forget the dynamics of how these things are like dominoes. And as you take Venezuela from a horrible place, not productive at all, only developing 1% of their oil to the place it was before the communists took over, it helps the world immensely. It makes the world a better place. And that's what Donald Trump is doing, is he's remaking the entire world. And it's breathtaking, and it's breadth and depth.
It's funny, Tom, the left, and this is what I love about what happened on Saturday too, is again, it's the start of the midterm election year. We're in now 2026, and President Trump has made the left defend a socialist dictator, drug pushing, cartel leading, scum like Maduro.
Yeah.
In the state, but I mean, these people are the ones that I'm going to your Maduro. I mean, your Cuba part of your analysis there. These are the people that have Che Guevara posters on their walls. These are the people that actually supported Castro and supported and still do the regime that led to, the torturous, horrendous conditions. I mean, I haven't heard them say it out loud. I think what Trump needs to do next, though, is say something about Kim Jong-un. I mean, it doesn't matter which socialist dictator or dictatorship he condemns or strikes or whatever, it makes the left reflexively, because of TDS, support them. So they support ISIS and Boko Haram because they were pissed off that Trump bombed them on Christmas Day to protect Christians. They defend Hamas. They defend Hezbollah. They defend, Maduro. They defended Chavez before that. And I'm talking about left-wing politicians. I'm talking about left-wing influencers like celebrities like Danny Glover and Sean Penn and Susan Sarandon, all of these, Maduro and Chavez lovers, Venezuela dictatorship lovers. They defended Castro. It's just bizarre, and I wonder how we can ever fully function as a country again, knowing that we can never, ever come together with these people, given the fact that they defend the worst elements of humanity at every turn.
Well, Bob, you're making a great point. I mean, I think when the history books are written, they may describe the Trump presidency, his second presidency, in our belief, his third presidency, that he it was all about the 80-20 law, because what he keeps doing is grabbing issues that the American people are 80% for, whether it's men out of women's sports, whether it's close the border, whether it's deport the illegal criminals. It's just, he's got them in just a terrible position because they simply cannot defend their position. And that's why, look at the polling. The Democratic Party their favorability rating now, Bob, is 18%. 18%. They don't have, look at the ratings for CNN, NSLSD, all those, or what's it called, MS Now, which is never.
I saw a meme. I saw a meme, by the way. MSNBC didn't work for them. MS Now isn't working for them. So what they're probably going to change over to now is MS-13.
Yeah. and they are MS-13.
I know.
And I think they should be, investigated and criminally, charged as well, because they are part of an apparatus. They are an anti-American, effort to destroy our country, Bob. People forget that. This is not Democrats and Republicans, left versus right. This is totalitarian Marxism trying to destroy the United States so they can rule the world. That is what this is. When they do these protests supporting Maduro, they're not saying that they want something good for America. They're saying they hate America. Those people interviewing Rubio and stuff, they're not Americans. They're not patriots. They are Marxists. They want America gone, and we must destroy them. And I believe that 2026 is the year that we win the war. I believe this is where we send, quote unquote, the Democrat Socialist Party the way of the Whigs, because they have nothing. What plan have you heard from Chuck Schumer or any of them that's good for America or Americans? They can't even agree on their affordability strategy, Bob, because they're all about hate America. Keep doing that, because we hate you too. And you're going to be gone. You're going to lose big time in November, despite what dream Nancy Pelosi has. We're going to crush them because Americans see it. And the 250th anniversary, Bob, I've got a thing up on my website at wethepeopleconvention.org that I would like people to go read and watch. It's about, that let's celebrate our anniversary, but how are you as an individual going to celebrate in your community the 250th anniversary? Because when we start talking about all the good things America has done in 250 years, Bob, we're going to come together. We're going to come together as a nation. Even the lunatics are going to have trouble when you talk about all the civil rights accomplishments we had, all the things we did in science and industry that made the world better. It's called positive self-talk. And for the last 25 years, the left has made sure our nation had negative self-talk. We stink. We're horrible. America's bigoted, racist, homophobic. Everything about America is wrong. This year, the 250th anniversary, we're going to be talking about all things America has done right. And it's a hell of a story. If you click on the articles section there, you'll see the link to that. Yeah. Go to videos. I'm sorry. Maybe it's under videos. I'm sorry. I'm losing my own.
All right. That's all right. I'm trying to piece my way through it myself.
Yeah. There's a bunch of stories, and you can scroll down and you'll see a picture of the 250th anniversary of America. If you click on that image, there's a little video from me there where I say, listen, folks, it's not a spectator sport. Being a representative republic is participatory. We're not going to sit back and watch Donald Trump celebrate our 250th anniversary. It's our 250th anniversary. And I talk in this video about you need to start planning for what has happened in your township, in your county, in our state, in our cities that happened in the last 250 years that's worth celebrating. We got to start talking about all that stuff. And if we do, we'll drown out all the negative nonsense, all the lies, all the propaganda, because the stories we have to tell, and I tell in this video the story about Stan Hewitt Hall in Akron as an example. And I just happened to come across a video about Stan Hewitt Hall on YouTube on Thursday. And I didn't remember that Alcoholics Anonymous was started in a little cottage on Stan Hewitt Hall's grounds by the granddaughter of of the Cyberlings, okay, where the guy that founded Alcoholics Anonymous came to her house and met with this doctor from Akron who was an alcoholic, and they started Alcoholics Anonymous, which has saved the lives of, I don't know, millions of people.
No doubt.
That happened in Akron, Ohio. I'll bet you 1% of the people in Akron, Ohio don't know that great story, and we need to tell that. And that's just one example. In Cleveland, the examples are unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm a lifelong Ohio, and I did not know that. That's an amazing story. So I'm glad you're doing that. That's real, true history of America. And by the way, as you can see on Tom's page here too, he's got his own podcast that he comes out every Saturday morning, right?
Yes.
Saturday. So make sure you are subscribing to that and follow that. WeThePeopleConvention.org is the place to see all of Tom's great work. WeThePeopleConvention.org. Okay, Tom, I want to pivot here with you for a moment because we are in Ohio. And as we all know, the governor's race is an interesting one, to say the very least. If we just pin and if we were to go forward and look at the fact that nobody has challenged Amy Acton, Sherrod Brown decided he wants to go back to the Senate. He's not running. Tim Ryan decided not to run. I don't think there's anybody left that might get in the way of Amy Acton there. But
no, I agree.
For now, it's Amy Acton and Vivek Ramaswamy. But on the Republican side, there is somebody who is getting in the way. His name is Casey Putsch. He's going to be on this program 2 days from now on Wednesday morning. I'm going to have him on at about this time at about 8 o'clock. And we're going to find out who Casey is and what he's all about. But I know you've got some thoughts on this from our chats offline and off air. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the fact that Vivek is going to have a challenger, at least one. There's another very nice woman that I've heard really positive things about named Heather Hill, who is also running. But her name recognition is literally zero. In other words, and I don't like to dismiss anybody's chances, and I don't want to discourage anybody from trying to serve and run, but these folks don't have a chance for the most part. But what they can do is get in the way, and they can get in the way of a clean one-on-one, Vivek versus Amy Acton type of showdown, and it could cause problems. We saw this the last time around in the Republican primary with Joe Blystone getting in the mix. So what are your thoughts, first of all, on the governor's race as it stands, and what are your thoughts on Casey Putsch, who apparently is pretty well funded? He's got a lot of money. He's been very successful as a podcaster himself, doing car talk or car thing. I don't consume that, but he's made an awful lot of money. He's got a big name recognition in that realm. In fact, it was big enough that Tucker Carlson invited him up to his cabin in Maine to talk to him. And now he is running against Vivek Ramaswamy. So Tom, take that in whatever direction you want.
So for your viewers and listeners and those in Ohio and you people around the country are going to be tuning into this because we're promoting it to our We the People convention members nationwide. What you have to understand is that Ohio is captured by the Rhino Republican Party that I call the Columbus Cartel. And when I say captured, I'm not exaggerating. I'm just speaking from 16 years of experience. The bottom line is it's all about power and control. And what their goal is to make sure you have no choice in who's going to be governor or any position in this state. They're going to decide by eliminating your choices. And you mentioned Blystone, okay, which was the Senate race, or excuse me, the governor's race with Blystone, Renacci, and DeWine. And, Jim Renacci would have won if Joe Blystone hadn't, quote unquote, challenged in that race. And there are beliefs by me and others that the DeWine campaign and the Rhinos helped keep Blystone in the race when he shouldn't have been in there. You and I had a text exchange where we talked about the goal of the Rhinos is always to split us, always to make sure that, our choice is not clear. So, we had Mike Gibbons and Josh Mandel splitting it, with, when J.D. Vance became the Senate candidate. We've seen that in the governor's race. And quite frankly, I said, on the interview you did with us on Christmas Eve, that I think the Columbus Cartel wants Amy Acton, the Democrat, to be the governor. And I've said this all along. Our experience is the Republican Party, and I don't mean, Alex and the common Republican voter. I'm talking about the elected Republican establishment has proven to us they will always take a Democrat over a Republican they can't control. That's their mantra. That's the whole thing. And so What's the problem with Vivek Ramaswamy? Bob, I don't think people have a clue yet. I don't think they really understand how much Vivek Ramaswamy wants to shake things up in Ohio. If you listen to him speak, he's very aspirational. He talks about we want to have the best schools, we want to have the best manufacturing, we want to have the best healthcare, we want to have the best job environment, we want to have the best housing. Very aspirational. But you can't achieve those things if you don't start to fight what holds Ohio back. He talks about competing with Florida and Texas. Well, why doesn't Ohio compete with Florida and Texas? Ohio was Florida and Texas before Florida and Texas were anything. Go back and study your history. We talked about the 250th anniversary. Cleveland, Ohio, folks, don't laugh. Don't spit out your coffee. Cleveland, Ohio was Silicon Valley in 1900. More patents were filed in Cleveland, Ohio in 1900 than in the entire world combined.
Really?
We were it. Cleveland, Ohio had, steel companies, rubber companies, oil and gas, auto manufacturing. We were it. Why aren't we now? We aren't. We still have the people. We still have all the resources. I mean, oh my gosh, Bob, we've got coal, gas, nuclear, hydro. We've got rivers. We've got Lake Erie. We've got farmland. We've got mining. We've got manufacturing. We've got service industries. We got insurance industry, food industries, Procter and Gamble. We have everything. Why aren't we Florida and Texas? One reason. One, bad government. Bad government from top to bottom, from your local township to your county commissioners and your county government to your state. Our state budget's a disgrace. We have $100 billion of spending from our state when states similar in size spend half that. And so
sometimes less than half. Yeah, I saw
half.
some of those studies. Yeah,
we're overtaxed, and we have it's just like workplace freedom. Why do we have problems with manufacturing in Ohio? Because the unions control our workplace. They can force you. The government has these rules that if you're going to build a government building, you have to do what's called prevailing wage. Bob, have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Prevailing wage for your listeners means that if you're going to do this government building, which we, the taxpayers, are paying for, you have to bid on it at the same rights as union wages, even if you're not a union company. You can't save any money. And so we're broke. We're broke. And we need to fix it. Guess what? You know who's going to fix it? Vivek Ramaswamy. That's why they don't want him. That's why they don't want him.
How's he going to do that from just one position? Because you just mentioned and by the way, I can already see Democrats, Amy Acton supporters right now, hearing what you just said and said, you just gave a commercial to the Democrat Party because we have all of these assets in Ohio you listed, steel and gas and everything you ran through is correct. You said, but why aren't we already Florida and Texas? And you said bad government. And that's going to be their say. That's why we need Democrats, because Republicans control all of our government. Yeah. And you know what? They got a point. Republicans do. It's just that they're the wrong kind of Republicans.
And also, Bob, unfortunately, as we saw at the Blue 22, the Democrat unions control the Republicans, as we saw with John Kasich. When John Kasich intentionally blew up the workplace freedom movement because the Democrat unions supported his campaigns and funded him. Mike DeWine is no damn Republican. Mike DeWine's been a Democrat his whole life. That's why we threw him out of the Senate seat when he's a U.S. senator, because he came out against guns. Okay, this is a fraud that's been, basically, a fraud that's been on the Ohio citizen and voter for years. And so, yeah, they're going to say, oh, the Republicans control this. Yeah, but look at our cities. Every city's controlled by Democrats. How good are they? Not very good. And yes, you're right. This is why there's a conflict now. And if you look back, Bob, it's really, what is Tom Zawistowski and so many people who's been in the Tea Party movement and then MAGA for the last 16 years, we've been trying to fight this. We've been trying to get representation. But you made the most important point when you talked about this push guy. What have we learned? We've learned that no matter what we do in Ohio, as citizens, we don't have agency. We don't have the right to control our elections by our vote. Our elections are controlled by money and TV advertising. And so the whole goal is you can vote for anyone you want as long as it's the two people we tell you can vote for, not who we want. We haven't been able to elect hardly anybody we've wanted except Donald Trump. And now we're hoping that we can elect Vivek Ramaswamy. And really, Bob, I'm sorry to say this, for one reason. I don't know how much money this Casey guy has, but Vivek Ramaswamy has $1 billion. And that's the difference. That's the only difference. The bottom line is Vivek Ramaswamy, because of his personal wealth, can tell the Republicans to go pound salt. That he can basically say, I'm running for the people and I want your votes because I'm going to represent your best interest, just like Donald Trump did in Venezuela over the weekend. And that's the difference. And
see, here's the problem, though.
That.
Here's the problem, though, Tom, that I need a solution to based on what you just said, though. If he says to the Republicans, go pound salt, I don't need your money. I'll fund this whole thing myself. I'm a multi-time billionaire, multi-times over. And that's very true. He does need them, though, to get things done in Columbus, in the legislature. He does need the Republican legislators to get him things to sign. And those individuals aren't as wealthy as he is. Those individuals need the donors that he's telling to go pound salt because I don't need you. They need them. And they, so in other words, they're going to answer to those people. So the Rhino class that we're talking about, or the Columbus cartel that you talk about, is going to have power here, regardless of whether Vivek Ramaswamy is in Columbus or not, or in the governor's office or not.
Yeah. So that ties into the property tax issue. That ties into, the whole issue that, we've been fighting, about for almost 2 years now, to repeal or roll back property taxes. The question is going to be, can we engage with these House members and Senate members to get them behind a plan to do something about property taxes? Now, as I said in that Christmas Eve video, and many people, if you're watching this channel, go back to the Christmas Eve issue where Bob and I had a long discussion about what's going on in this state.
Yep.
Let's talk about what I've said so far. We have bad government. I'm talking about township trustee. I'm talking about county commissioners. I'm talking about city council. How do you affect that if you're governor? Well, I've said to Vivek that the whole reason for the property tax issue is that we can't fix government unless we break it. Okay? Meaning, I learned from Doge. What did you and I learn from Doge? Musk says, look at all this waste, fraud, and abuse. Hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. And we're seeing it now in this Somali stuff and the Medicare and all the SNAP stuff we found with all the dead people getting SNAP and getting SNAP in 8 states and all that. And what's happened? Nothing. Congress has done nothing. They did that stupid rescission package in August where they repealed $9 billion, which is 0.1% of our budget. That's what we got. And that told me that you can't work through the system and talk to them and say, well, we need to cut back and you need to look at these things. You got to take the money away from them, Bob. You got to defund them. You've got to find a mechanism to take the money away so they must reform, so that they must do things to serve us better as citizens. If you don't do that, they will never do it. And Vivek gets that. He gets that. And so part of it's going to be that we're going to have to do this property tax reform to send a message all the way from the legislature to your local library board that the days of you just charging us more and more and more because you can are over. And now we're going to give you a haircut, and then we're going to start working with you to reform government in Ohio, or we're never going to be Texas or Florida. We're going to be the mess that we are today.
Tom, why do you think that Vivek is struggling in some aspects of, securing the Republican support. And I don't mean the nomination because that's going to come, but because I don't think anybody's going to vote for Amy Acton, who is a true Republican in the state of Ohio, but they'll just not vote at all. Why do you think there is a disconnect? Because there's a reason. Let me pull him back up here again. There's a reason why this Casey Putsch individual has decided to throw his hat into the ring. And again, I'm going to have him on Wednesday, so I'll dig into his motivations and what his thoughts are a lot more deeply on Wednesday. But here's just for those who have not yet seen who he is. Calls himself America First. He's made a huge name for himself on YouTube. He's got 350,000 subscribers because he does a car show or a car type educational program on YouTube, and apparently a pretty good guy according to what everything I'm reading. But this individual stepped up because he sees a lane he wouldn't have. One would think if things were going swimmingly for Vivek. Vivek has got the Trump endorsement, for crying out loud. He got the Ohio GOP endorsement a year before the primaries, which is pretty extraordinary. It would make it seem like this is a smooth sail for him. He's just got to focus on Amy Acton now. But here comes another guy because he does see a chink in the armor. And so do a lot of other conservatives. Why do you think Vivek is not quite resonating with all Ohio Republicans and conservatives the way one would think he would, given the Trump endorsement, et cetera?
Yeah. So as you and I talked and offline, and I'll share it with people here,
please.
This is the cartel. This is a paid for campaign to bloody up Vivek. If you've seen Vivek, you've gone to events where he's at, they're sold out everywhere he goes. When this garbage, online, you'll see these things on X. Nobody likes Vivek in Ohio. Go to any one of his events. Capacity crowds. People love him. Okay, but they don't want you to know that. So what's going on? Oh, how about all these stories about Vivek's speech at AmFest was so anti-American. He doesn't understand the difference between immigrants and American heritage, heritage Americans. Right? A made-up word, heritage Americans. There's no such thing as a heritage American. There's Americans. I'm Americans. I'm not a heritage American. You're not. Okay? But why did that happen? Because there are bigger forces that want to attack Vivek and keep him out of the governor's share. And so this Push guy, you say he's got a lot of money? I can't wait. See if he can tell you how much his net worth is when you talk to him. Okay? See if you can find out. Ask him who's supporting him. Because you and I have seen these very professional posts now coming out that this guy doesn't have the political acumen to be doing. Somebody big is behind him. And then you told me that Tucker Carlson interviewed this guy?
Yeah.
Why the hell would Tucker Carlson interview this guy who's a nobody, who's done nothing? But
I think I found out that part of it, by the way, Tom, because I was wondering that too. From what I understand, and I didn't see it, but I saw like a screenshot of Tucker and his interview with this guy, and it was about one of these car designs. He has apparently designed a car with an engine that can drive you from New York to LA on one tank. It's some sort of like massive hyper, efficient.
Okay, so the interview is about his business. Not
That's
about
what I think.
government.
That's from a screenshot that I saw. So
okay, because that makes sense to me.
And did they then delve into politics after that and into his run for? I don't know. I didn't see it.
I don't know.
But that's one of the reasons I'm going to ask him Wednesday morning right here on this channel. I'm going to ask Casey Putsch, why were you in Maine talking to Tucker? What did you guys talk about? What led to that? I'll find out as much as I can, and we're going to have him on, and I'm going to ask him about every single element you and I are talking about.
Well, I see, and this is the important thing. I don't want to hear another, patriot talking about how patriotic they are and how they love Trump and all that stuff. I don't want to hear that in this interview with him. I want you to ask him about governing Ohio. I want him to tell you what he thinks is wrong with Ohio and how he intends to fix it. I want you to ask him, how can somebody who has no political experience, even at the local level, how is he going to pick the 26 cabinet members to fill these key jobs in Columbus if he were to become governor? I want you to, ask him those kind of questions about what's our budget? What should it be? Tell me about Medicare and how Kasich brought, the state budget, Bob, I think is 55% of our money is from the federal government because of what John Kasich did. What does he think about that? What's his political acumen, but also his governing acumen? This is serious stuff. You're running for governor of Ohio. I don't care if you're a patriot. You and I know thousands of patriots who are really good people, really well-intentioned. And many of them say, well, I'm running because God told me to do so. Yeah, that's not good enough. We've heard that. I need to know, what are you going to do to make life better for Ohioans, and what gives you the skill set that you can do it? Because we have, I don't know, 80,000 employees in the Ohio, state employees. What's his experience governing something that's 80,000 employees?
It's a great question, and all those are great questions. Everything you just said, and we're going to get into policy, and we're getting into experience and what his views are and what his visions are for Ohio. Absolutely, we'll do that, and we'll find out again. I'm hoping to hear from some of his supporters too. That's the main reason I want to have him on. I want to learn about him. I want to be fair to people. But I want to learn about why he does have supporters, those who are turning against Vivek and saying we're looking for an alternative. Why? It's more than just what is the appeal to Casey for you, but why are you opposed to Vivek so much so that you're looking at somebody else? Because unity is how we win in the state, and the division is how we lose.
That's right. That's how you get Amy Acton.
There you go. Tom Zawistowski, WeThePeopleConvention.org, WeThePeopleConvention.org, and that X handle again, Tom?
It's Tom Z, WTPC.
This is the first time we've broadcast live on X. Obviously, we're on Rumble, which is my hub, but we pushed it out today to YouTube and also to X for the very first time.
Oh, awesome. Great.
Yeah, just trying to get more people to know about the channel, but I want everybody watching, whether you're on X or on YouTube or anywhere else right now, to please make sure you subscribe and follow us on Rumble. That's the hub, and if you want to see what we do get expanded and amplified in 2026, we need more people on the hub to follow and subscribe. And make sure you do the same thing with Tom Z and all of his great work. Tom, thank you, brother. It's always a pleasure to talk politics with you. We'll do it again soon, I'm sure.
Okay. You have a great week. Thanks, Bob.
You too, buddy. All right. That's Tom Zawistowski, president. See, that's why he goes by Tom Z. It's easier. Tom Zawistowski, the president of the We the People Convention, online at WeThePeopleConvention.org. All right. Chatters, awesome. Thank you. You guys came in early. A number of people came in early, even though, this is perhaps not ideal for you. We were doing 10 to noon. Now we're doing 7 to 9 a.m. I want everybody to know that's going to be the routine going forward. It's going to be 7 to 9 a.m. We're going to be live. So if you want to be in the live stream and talk to people, other people as the show is going on, and ask questions of me and so forth, you got to do it from 7 to 9, and then we're going to run this back from 10 to noon every day. At least that's the plan. I got to make sure we know how to do all of that, but that is the plan. Meantime, that's how it's going to be until it is possible for me to do this back, when in the time slot that you want. That's my way of saying, help us out. If you support the mission, if you support the agenda that we're trying to advance, we have to amplify our voices. And that means we have to be seen in more places. So any support you can offer through the Rumble Rants button at the bottom of the page, you see with the $ there, or in any of the other things you see on the crawl, different places to donate to this channel to try to make this bigger and broader and more, like I said, more effective in advancing the message in 2026. Please do that. And also, as I've said plenty of times, the biggest thing you can do, in addition to the financial support of the channel and of the mission, is to share this information with other people. There are millions of conservatives, millions in just the state of Ohio alone. We got 11.5 million people in Ohio, and it's a dominantly red state. So there are millions of Ohioans who don't even know this show is on right now. They don't know, and we need to let them know. As the Cavs like to say, let them know. All right, so share this. Right click up in the URL, copy the channel, and and send this to people that you know on your email account, on your text chat groups, or group text chats, I guess I should say. your social media people. You can put it on your actual social media pages, or you want to DM individuals. Just get the message to them that we're here. Tell them to like, follow, and subscribe so that organic algorithmic pushes can take place and will have the impact we need to here in the state of Ohio and across the country in 2026. All right. So thanks to Tom Z. Thanks to my friend Brian from TNAM, the New American Media, for helping me out today, as always. And thanks to you for chatting, everybody in the chat room. Love you guys. Thank you for the support, as always. Hit me up if you have any questions. Email me, bob@strictlyspeaking.org, bob@strictlyspeaking.org. I try to engage with that as much as I possibly can. And we're going to be back tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. sharp, to do this all over again. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Be well, be safe, stay